globally. Something like over 1 billion individuals face challenges with mental illness. It's huge.
It really is. And for so many people, the first step, the standard approach, involves medication.
Right. But what if we're mostly just treating symptoms, not getting to the root cause?
Exactly. And what if there's a more sort of foundational way, something more empowering, maybe through the food we eat?
That's what we're digging into today. We're doing a deep dive into the work of Dr. Georgia Ede. She's a Harvard-trained psychiatrist, and she wrote, "Change your diet, change your mind."
And you listening right now, you might be feeling a bit lost in all the info out there about mental health and diet. It can be overwhelming, right?
Totally. Or maybe you've tried things and they haven't quite stuck or didn't give you lasting results.
So our mission today is to really pull out Dr. Ede's core message. We've looked at her interviews, her presentations, trying to cut through the noise.
Yeah, to get to the crucial stuff. How profoundly our food choices actually impact our minds.
And we're not just talking about, throwing some blueberries on your cereal.
No, definitely not. Just adding a few superfoods. Dr. Ede's work, it seems to emphasize reshaping your whole diet, fundamentally.
That's the key. How that can really affect your mood, anxiety, focus, memory, your overall brain health.
It's not a quick fix, is it? It's more about understanding that biological link. Food and mind.
Precisely. And just to be clear, everything we're discussing comes straight from Dr. Ede's perspective, from her talks and interviews.
Okay, so let's jump in. Where should we start? Maybe with that common idea.
The brain foods idea, like, blueberries, flax seeds, turmeric, that kind of thing. People think adding these protects the brain.
Right, you hear that all the time, but Dr. Ede kind of flips that, doesn't she? What's her take?
Well, what's really interesting is she says true brain health isn't just about adding things, it's about restructuring the whole diet.
Okay.
The real leverage, she argues, comes from removing the stuff that's actually causing damage in the first place. Things causing inflammation, oxidative stress.
Oxidative stress, like rust, basically, on your brain cells.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And insulin resistance, taking out the foods that drive those problems.
So it's more about subtraction than addition, initially at least.
In many ways, yes. Because even a diet that looks healthy on the surface, if it's high carb and you're insulin resistant, well, it can actually starve your brain.
Which shows focusing only on blood sugar isn't enough. You have to think about insulin too.
Absolutely. And this ties into the book's title, right? Change your diet, change your mind, not change your brain.
Okay. There's a distinction there. Why mind?
Dr. Ede explains it's because you first need to change your mind about food, your beliefs about what's healthy.
Because a lot of what works best for the brain might go against, well, common dietary wisdom.
Exactly. Think about whole grains or fears about red meat or cholesterol or the idea you need a rainbow of plants all the time. Some of that doesn't quite line up with brain biology, according to her research.
It really does make you question things you thought were settled fact.
And food is literally the source of the brain's building blocks and chemicals. So changing your diet is fundamentally the most powerful way to change brain chemistry.
Okay, so let's talk about one of those big drivers she mentioned, metabolic health, specifically insulin resistance.
Yes, this is huge. This field, metabolic psychiatry, it's all about recognizing how your body's energy system, your metabolism, is tied to your mental health.
Makes sense.
And insulin resistance is a major player. Dr. Ede points out it's heavily involved in many mental health issues. It's seen in like 80% of Alzheimer's patients.
80%. Wow, that's staggering. How does that actually work? How does insulin resistance affect the brain?
Well, think of insulin like a key. It unlocks the door on your brain cells so glucose sugar can get in and provide energy.
Okay.
With insulin resistance, that key is sort of rusty or bent. The sugar might be floating around in your bloodstream, plenty of it, but it can't get into the brain cells efficiently.
So the brain cells aren't getting the fuel they need, even if there's fuel available nearby.
Precisely. It's a paradox. You can have high blood sugar. Your brain is technically swimming in glucose, but it's effectively starving because the insulin isn't working right to let it in.
That's a powerful image, a starving brain surrounded by food. So what's the workaround? How does the brain get energy then?
Good question. And this is where ketones come in. Dr. Ede highlights these as an alternative fuel.
Ketones. Those are produced when you burn fat, right? Like on a keto diet.
Exactly. When your carb intake is really low, your body shifts to burning fat and makes ketones. And the cool thing is ketones seem to bypass some of that insulin resistance problem. They can get into the brain cells more easily and provide energy.
So it's like a different fuel line that still works when the main one is blocked.
Kind of, yeah. It provides a stable energy source. And this connects to work by others, like Dr. Ben Bikman, who she references. He really emphasizes controlling insulin levels for overall health.
Right, keeping insulin low seems to be a recurring theme.
Absolutely. And Dr. E draws a parallel to those GLP-1 medications that are becoming so common now.
Oh, the ones for blood sugar and appetite control, like Ozempic.
Yes, she points out that ketogenic diets often achieve similar metabolic results. They lower both glucose and insulin, but, without the potential side effects, the costs, the injections.
That's a really interesting comparison. And she mentioned a statistic about how many people might qualify for those drugs.
Yeah, it's quite alarming. Over half of adults in the U.S. apparently meet the criteria for a GLP-1 prescription.
50%.
Yes.
That just shows how widespread this metabolic dysfunction really is.
It's huge. It really frames the scale of the problem we're facing.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. What about ADHD? How does this brain energy idea connect there?
Well, stable brain energy is absolutely critical for attention, for focus. Makes sense, right? If your energy is spiking and crashing.
It's hard to concentrate.
Definitely. So Dr. Eid contrasts the effects of, say, sugar, vegetable oils, ultra-processed foods, things that cause energy instability, with the steady energy you get from whole foods that keep glucose and insulin more stable.
Avoiding the roller coaster. And she's seen results in practice with ADHD patients using keto.
Yes, she shares observations and emphasizes this needs medical supervision, but she's seen ADHD patients potentially reduce or even stop stimulant meds when on a ketogenic diet.
Wow. That suggests it might be addressing something fundamental in how their brains regulate energy.
It seems that way, and it's not just anecdotal. She mentioned there's research coming out of places like Oxford and the University of Michigan looking specifically at keto for adult ADHD.
That's really encouraging. It offers another potential path. Now, for someone listening, keto can sound intense. Can you break down the basics?
Sure. Fundamentally, it's about drastically cutting carbohydrates. When you do that, your body has to switch fuel sources. It goes from burning mainly glucose to burning fat.
And that fat-burning process makes the ketones we talked about.
Right. That's the core metabolic shift.
What about things like ketone supplements, exogenous ketones? Do they do the same thing?
They might help some people, maybe smooth the transition. But Dr. Eid seems to feel the real deep benefits come from the body making its own ketones consistently because of the diet change itself. It's about lowering that insulin long term.
Got it. It's the internal shift that matters most. And keto isn't brand new, is it? It has a history.
No, not at all. It was originally developed, decades ago for epilepsy, especially for kids whose seizures didn't respond to standard meds.
Right, I've heard that.
And the thinking for why it might help in bipolar disorder kind of stems from that, the idea that it helps stabilize brain chemistry and activity, similar to how it helps with seizures.
That connection makes a lot of sense. Are there hurdles when starting, like side effects?
Yeah, she does talk about the keto adaptation phase, sometimes called the keto flu.
Oh,
It's basically your body adjusting. You might feel a bit off, tired, maybe headachy for a short while as your system gets used to running on fat. It's usually temporary.
good to know. So Dr. Ead's approach sounds very personalized. She talks about N of 1. What's that mean?
It just means everyone's an individual experiment, essentially. What works perfectly for one person might not be the best fit for another.
Right.
So her book emphasizes finding what works for you, your preferences, your body, your goals. It's not a single rigid plan.
Does she offer different options then?
Yes. She outlines 3 main patterns. Sort of moderate carb paleo diet, a paleo-based ketogenic diet, and then a carnivore diet, which is obviously more restrictive. It gives people a spectrum to explore.
That offers flexibility. What if someone isn't ready for like a total diet overhaul? Does she have suggestions for that?
Absolutely. She includes single steps people can take, things like just cutting out alcohol first, or sugar, or maybe flour and grains, or dairy. You can start smaller.
That makes it seem much less daunting. Okay, we've talked about what to eat, potentially. Let's focus on things she flags as particularly bad. Processed foods and refined fats.
Yeah, this is key. And first, it's important to distinguish, right? Processing like chopping or cooking or fermenting, that's fine, often beneficial.
We're talking industrial processing.
Exactly. The stuff that creates foods far removed from their original state. She really zeroes in on refined carbs, white flour, sugary drinks, and refined seed oils.
Seed oils, you mean like vegetable oils,
Yeah.
soybean, corn, canola?
Yes, those. She points out these oils basically didn't exist in our diet in large amounts until modern refining tech came along. And they're prone to oxidative stress. They go rancid easily, even inside our bodies.
More that rust issue.
Kind of. And specifically, she talks about linoleic acid, an omega-6 fat that's super high in these oils. Our intake has skyrocketed over the last century.
And that's bad for the brain.
Her argument is that the brain doesn't handle these fats optimally. It might increase that oxidative stress and inflammation, potentially messing with neurotransmitters.
And ultra-processed foods have other junk in them too, right?
Oh yeah. Preservatives, emulsifiers, artificial colors, sweeteners. It's another layer of stuff our bodies and brains might not be equipped to handle well. Some emulsifiers, for instance, might disrupt our gut bacteria, which we know impacts the brain.
It really sounds like a perfect storm for poor health. So, with all this evidence, why isn't this approach more mainstream in medicine, especially psychiatry?
Well, Dr. Eads shares her own experience. She says she got basically zero nutrition training in medical school or during her psychiatry residency.
Likely.
None.
Practically none. So many doctors just aren't trained to think about diet's impact on mental health in this deep way. It wasn't part of the curriculum.
So maybe less resistance, more just lack of awareness or training.
Largely, yeah. But she is hopeful. She sees growing interest in metabolic psychiatry. More doctors are seeking out training now, wanting CME courses on using keto for mental health.
That's a good sign. Things might be shifting.
Slowly, perhaps. And she also points out, medications, while helpful for many, aren't perfect. They have side effects, sometimes significant ones like metabolic issues, weight gain.
And they don't work for everyone or not completely.
Right. So having dietary strategies offers another avenue. It offers hope, especially when conventional treatments haven't provided the full answer. It's empowering. Definitely gives people more tools. Now, she also mentioned a specific tool for self-monitoring, continuous glucose monitors, CGMs.
Yes, she's a big fan of these. They let you see in real time how different foods affect your blood sugar.
Even if you don't have diabetes.
Absolutely. She thinks they're incredibly valuable for anyone wanting to understand their own metabolism better and how it relates to how they feel mentally and physically.
So you eat something and you see the graph right on your phone.
Exactly. And she's found that seeing that direct personal feedback, oh, that food sent my blood sugar soaring, is way more motivating for changing eating habits than just reading about it.
It makes it concrete. Not abstract science, but your body's reaction.
Right. It takes the guesswork out. She really recommends people consider trying one, even for a month or two, just to learn about themselves.
Fascinating. This whole deep dive has been incredibly insightful. If you had to boil down the core message from Dr. Eads' work, what would it be?
I think the core is empowerment. It's that you really do have significant influence over your mental health through your food choices by choosing foods that actually respect your brain's biology.
Nourishing, protecting, energizing the brain from the ground up.
That's it. And for anyone listening who feels like they've tried everything, this offers real, genuine hope, a different path.
It opens up the possibility of feeling better than maybe you thought possible.
Exactly. It's a powerful message.
So if people want to learn more, where should they go?
Dr. Eads' website is a great starting point, diagnosisdiet.com. Lots of free articles, resources, even a directory of clinicians who get this stuff.
Okay, diagnosisdiet.com.
And of course, her book, Change Your Diet, Change Your Mind. It's very comprehensive. Also, the Metabolic Mind website, metabolicmind.org, has great interviews, science updates, and personal stories.
Excellent resources. Okay, let's wrap up with a final thought for our listeners to chew on.
How about this? What if the daily mental struggles you've maybe accepted as just normal, the anxiety, the brain fog, the mood swings, what if that's not actually normal baseline? What if it's a direct result of how we've been feeding our brains for decades?
Makes you question the status quo.
Maybe it's time to question that conventional wisdom and really consider food not just as fuel, but as foundational information for your mental well-being.